First Contact Protocol. The mining vessel Copernicus wasn't designed to make history. Its weathered hull and practical design spoke to its singular purpose: extracting rare Earth elements from the asteroid belt beyond Mars. Captain Sarah Chen had made this run countless times, but something was different about today's routine scan of asteroid 2047X. The readings were unlike anything she'd seen in 15 years of deep space mining. "Dr. Patel, are you seeing this?" Sarah called out to her science officer, her eyes fixed on the holographic display. The asteroid's composition was shifting before her eyes, its structure seeming to ripple like water. Raj Patel's fingers danced across his console, his usual methodical demeanor replaced by barely contained excitement. "Captain, these readings, they're not natural. The material density is far too uniform, and there's an energy signature emanating from the core that doesn't match any known element." The crew of 12 gathered around the bridge displays, watching as the asteroid's surface began to change. What they had initially mistaken for rock was transforming, revealing sleek metallic panels that gleamed in the distant sunlight. It wasn't an asteroid at all. It was a station. "All hands to stations," Sarah ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Full defensive protocols. Raj, get me everything you can on that structure. Martinez, keep us at a safe distance but maintain visual contact." The next few hours were tense as the Copernicus maintained its position, monitoring the structure while broadcasting standard greeting protocols on all frequencies. The crew jumped when their communication system suddenly crackled to life with a response, not in any human language, but in perfectly structured mathematical sequences. Raj's eyes widened as he analyzed the transmission. "Captain, they're teaching us their language, in real time. The complexity of this is beyond anything we've ever encountered." Sarah watched as symbols began arranging themselves on their main screen, gradually forming patterns that their computers could interpret. Within hours, they had established basic communication with whatever intelligence controlled the station. That's when they learned the truth. They weren't the discoverers. They were the discovered. The station was an observation post, one of thousands scattered throughout human-occupied space, monitoring humanity's development. Their mining operation had simply strayed too close, forcing the observers to reveal themselves. "We are representatives of the Galactic Federation." The translated message read, "Your species has been under observation since your first nuclear detonation. We regret this premature contact, but protocols must now be initiated." Before Sarah could respond, more ships appeared around them, seeming to step out of nowhere as if space itself was a curtain they could pull aside. The vessels were elegant, their designs defying human engineering principles. They made the Copernicus look like a child's toy in comparison. "We have been watching your species with great interest," the message continued, "and great concern. There is much you must understand about your place in the galaxy and why contact has been delayed." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. There was something in the phrasing that suggested their isolation hadn't been merely about waiting for humanity to develop sufficient technology. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Mining Corporation vessel Copernicus," she responded. "We're prepared to establish diplomatic relations on behalf of humanity." The response came quickly. "Captain Chen, your species classification requires special protocols. We will escort your vessel to a secure facility for proper first contact procedures. Please understand that any deviation from our instructions will be considered a hostile act." As the alien ships moved to surround the Copernicus, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they seemed less like an honor guard and more like prison escorts. Whatever humanity's classification was, it had these advanced beings treating her small mining vessel with the kind of caution usually reserved for unexploded ordnance. "Raj," she whispered, keeping her voice low even though she knew the aliens could probably hear everything aboard her ship, "start recording everything. Something tells me Earth is going to want every detail of what happens next." The Copernicus was enveloped in a field of shimmering energy, and Sarah felt a subtle shift in the ship's vibrations. They were being moved, transported through space in a way their instruments couldn't even begin to comprehend. As the stars blurred around them, she realized that humanity's understanding of the universe was about to change dramatically, and not necessarily in the way they had hoped. The journey lasted both an instant and an eternity. When reality settled around them again, they found themselves in orbit around a massive space station that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Its surface was alive with lights and movement, showing signs of activity that suggested thousands, if not millions, of inhabitants. "Welcome to Observation Post Prime," the transmission stated. "Your species evaluation will begin shortly. Please prepare your crew for processing." Sarah exchanged glances with her crew, seeing her own mix of excitement and apprehension reflected in their eyes. They had just become humanity's first ambassadors to an advanced galactic civilization. But why did it feel like they were being admitted to a secure facility rather than welcomed as equals? As the Copernicus was guided into a docking bay large enough to house a small city, Sarah couldn't help but notice the heavy security presence. The beings she could see through the viewports were diverse in form, but they all moved with a purposeful vigilance that set her military-trained instincts on edge. "Captain," Raj called out, his voice tense, "I'm detecting energy readings throughout the station. Weapons, I think. A lot of them. All powered up, and," he paused, double-checking his readings, "all pointed inward. At the docking bays." Sarah nodded grimly. "Whatever humanity's classification is, I don't think we're going to like it. Stand ready, everyone. First contact is about to get interesting." The docking clamps engaged with a gentle shudder, and the crew of the Copernicus prepared to meet their galactic neighbors. As the airlock cycled, Sarah straightened her uniform and took a deep breath. Whatever came next would change the course of human history. She just hoped it would be a change for the better. Little did she know, the galaxy's careful plans for managing humanity's emergence were about to be thoroughly disrupted by the very qualities that had caused them to isolate Earth in the first place. The assessment. The processing chamber of Observation Post Prime resembled a cross between a medical bay and an interrogation room. Captain Chen and her crew stood separated in individual containment fields, each surrounded by an array of scanning devices that hummed with unknown purpose. Their alien observers moved with practiced efficiency, but Sarah noticed how they maintained careful distance from the humans. "These readings cannot be correct," muttered a tall, crystalline being that Sarah's translator identified as Chief Observer Angstfall. Its crystalline structure shifted colors as it spoke, currently pulsing with bands of worried amber. "Run the cognitive pattern analysis again." Dr. Patel, despite being confined in his containment field, couldn't contain his scientific curiosity. "Is there something wrong with our brain patterns?" he asked, earning sharp looks from several of the alien technicians. Angsthal's crystalline form flickered with surprise, as if unused to test subjects engaging in conversation. "Your neural architecture." It paused, choosing its words carefully, "defies classification. You appear to be simultaneously utilizing multiple cognitive frameworks that should be mutually exclusive." Sarah watched as more alien observers gathered around the display showing their scan results. Their reactions ranged from fascination to what she could only interpret as fear. "Perhaps if you explained what you're looking for," she suggested, "we could help you understand." "Understanding is precisely what we fear you possess too much of," came a new voice. A being that appeared to be made of shifting shadows emerged from a doorway that hadn't been there moments before. The other aliens immediately straightened in deference. "High Commissioner Skvex," Angstthal acknowledged, its crystal form dimming respectfully. The shadow being moved closer to Sarah's containment field, its form rippling like smoke. "When we first detected your species' quantum signature, we assumed our instruments were malfunctioning. No naturally evolved species should be able to simultaneously hold contradictory thoughts without cognitive collapse. Yet you humans do it constantly." Sarah thought about this. "You mean our ability to imagine things that aren't real? To think creatively?" "Creativity," Skvex pronounced the word like it was both fascinating and dangerous. You use that term so casually, yet do you understand what it means? Your species doesn't just imagine alternatives. You actively reshape reality to match your imaginations. It's unprecedented. The testing continued for hours. The aliens presented them with problem after problem, each designed to test different aspects of human cognition. Simple logic puzzles gave way to complex ethical dilemmas and abstract pattern recognition challenges. But it was the unexpected responses that seemed to disturb their observers the most. During one test, Engineer Martinez was presented with a broken piece of alien technology and asked to repair it. Instead of following the expected procedure, he completely redesigned the device, improving its efficiency by 40%. The observing aliens were so disturbed by this that they immediately quarantined the modified device. "You didn't just fix it," Axthal stated, its crystalline form now pulsing with deep purple bands of agitation. "You changed it, improved it, without understanding its fundamental principles or having access to our technical database." Martinez shrugged. "I just saw a better way to route the power flow. It's not that complicated." "Not that." Axthal's form flickered rapidly. "Do you understand what you've done? This design has been standardized across the galaxy for 10,000 years. No species has questioned it, let alone improved it. It's perfect." "Nothing's perfect," Martins replied. "There's always room for improvement." The shadow form of Skivex seemed to grow darker. "And therein lies the danger. Your species doesn't accept limitations. You don't recognize impossibility. When faced with a wall, you don't stop. You break through, climb over, dig under, or simply pretend the wall doesn't exist until reality complies with your decision." Sarah noticed how the security presence in the chamber had doubled during this exchange. "You make that sound like a bad thing," she said carefully. "It is dangerous," Skivex replied. "The galaxy operates on order, on known variables and accepted constants. Your species introduces chaos. You take our carefully constructed models, and you—" the shadow being seemed to shudder. "Innovate." The testing continued, but now Sarah understood they weren't being evaluated for admission into galactic society. They were being assessed as a potential threat. Every creative solution, every unexpected approach was noted with increasing concern by their observers. The final test involved a simulation of a no-win scenario. Each crew member was presented with an impossible situation: a colony ship in danger with no conventional means of rescue. The accepted response was to acknowledge the impossibility and accept the loss. Not a single human did. Each crew member came up with a different solution, each more outlandish than the last. They proposed everything from redirecting stellar wind to creating controlled quantum fluctuations. Some solutions were practically impossible, others violated multiple laws of physics. But they all had one thing in common: they refused to accept the scenario as unwinnable. "Extraordinary," Axthal whispered, reviewing the results. "Given an impossible problem, they don't try to solve it. They change the parameters of reality until the problem becomes solvable. This level of reality manipulation through sheer force of will is precisely why their species was quarantined." Skivex finished. "Imagine this applied to warfare, to expansion, to cultural exchange. They would transform everything they touch, remake it in their image, simply because they believe they can improve it." Sarah had heard enough. "With all due respect," she interrupted, causing several aliens to step back in alarm at her sudden speech. "You're talking about us like we're some kind of virus. We don't transform things because we want to dominate them. We do it because we want to make things better, for everyone." "That is exactly what we fear," Skivex replied softly. "Your species doesn't even recognize how revolutionary your thinking is. You take the impossible and make it probable. You take the fixed and make it mutable. Every human we've tested has demonstrated this ability. It's not an aberration. It's fundamental to your species." The shadow being turned to address the other observers. "The quarantine protocols were correct. They are not ready for integration. The risk of contamination is too high. Their ideas, their methods, they would spread through the galaxy like a cognitive virus, disrupting thousands of years of stability. And if we refuse to be quarantined? Sarah asked, her voice quiet but firm. The containment field around her hummed slightly louder. That, Skivex replied, is precisely the kind of impossible thinking we must prevent from spreading to other species. But even as the shadow being spoke these words, alarms began blaring throughout the station. A junior observer rushed into the chamber, its insectoid form vibrating with urgency. "High Commissioner," it chittered, "we're detecting multiple unauthorized quantum events in the human solar system. The Galactic Empire has launched an invasion fleet. They're targeting Earth." Sarah watched as the aliens' careful control began to crack. Humanity's quarantine was about to be broken, not by their own actions, but by one of the very species that had agreed to enforce it. And now the galaxy would learn exactly why humans have been isolated, not to protect humanity from the galaxy, but to protect the galaxy from humanity's unlimited potential. Breaking point. The command center of observation Post Prime erupted into chaos as reports of the Galactic invasion flooded in. Holographic displays showed thousands of warships emerging from quantum space around Earth's orbital defense network. The Drachnids, a species notorious for their aggressive expansion, had decided to bypass the quarantine protocols entirely. "This is unprecedented." Anxthal's crystalline form pulsed with rapid flashes of distress. The Drachnids signed the quarantine accords. They know the dangers of exposing themselves to human influence. High Commissioner Skivex's shadowy form roiled with barely contained fury. "They see only a primitive species with valuable resources. They believe they can subjugate humanity before their innovative tendencies can take effect." Captain Chen, still contained within the observation field, watched the tactical displays with growing concern. The Drachnid fleet was massive, their ships bristling with weapons that made humanity's most advanced defenses look primitive in comparison. But something about their formation caught her attention. "They're being predictable," she said, causing several alien observers to turn toward her. "Their attack pattern is too perfect, too by the book. They're not adapting to the terrain at all." Skivex moved closer to her containment field. "The Drachnids have used the same tactical algorithms for 10,000 years. They are perfect, refined through millennia of warfare." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Perfect means predictable, and predictable means beatable. She straightened up, her voice taking on the commanding tone that had earned her captaincy. "You need to let us contact Earth. Now." "Out of the question," Anxthal protested. "The quarantine protocols are already broken." Sarah interrupted. "Right now, you have two choices. Maintain your precious protocols and watch Earth fall, or let us show you why humanity was worth quarantining in the first place." The command center fell silent as Skivex considered her words. Finally, the shadow being gestured, and the containment fields disappeared. "Contact your world, Captain. Show us what humanity can do." Sarah didn't waste time. She quickly established communication with Earth's Defense Command, rapidly explaining the situation. The response she got wasn't panic or despair. It was laughter. "You mean they haven't changed their tactics in 10,000 years?" General Rivera's voice came through clearly, containing an edge of excitement that clearly disturbed the alien observers. "And we have access to their tactical database. This is going to be interesting." Over the next few hours, the alien observers watched in fascination and horror as humanity demonstrated exactly why they had been quarantined. Earth's defenders didn't just fight back. They innovated, adapted, and turned the Drachnid's own perfect tactics against them. The first surprise came when Earth's quantum physicists, after a mere 30 minutes of studying the Drachnid fleet's quantum wake signatures, developed a way to predict where their ships would emerge from quantum space. The Drachnids, used to enemies who would respect the established rules of space warfare, found their carefully planned attack routes turned into kill zones. "Impossible," Anxthal whispered, watching as human ships seemed to arrive at arrival points before the Drachnid vessels emerged. They're exploiting quantum uncertainties that took our species millennia to understand. But that was just the beginning. Human engineers, given access to basic scans of Drachnid technology, began improvising countermeasures that shouldn't have been possible with Earth's tech level. They weren't just fighting with what they had. They were inventing new weapons and defenses in the middle of the battle. They're using their own ships' reactor cores to generate localized quantum disruption fields. One of the alien technicians reported, their multiple appendages trembling in disbelief. The concept is sound, but the risk, one miscalculation, and they'd destroy themselves. Humans call that acceptable risk, Sarah explained, watching as Earth's defenders continued to surprise and confound the invaders. When the alternative is defeat, we get creative. The Drachnid fleet, faced with tactics and technologies that didn't exist hours ago, began to falter. Their perfect formations, unchanged for millennia, were being torn apart by strategies they had no protocols for. Human ships, grossly outgunned and outnumbered, were winning through sheer unpredictability and innovative thinking. This is why we feared them, Skivex commented, watching as another Drachnid battle group fell to an impossible combination of improvised weapons and unorthodox tactics. In mere hours, they've developed counters to strategies that have dominated galactic warfare for thousands of years. They're not just fighting the Drachnids, they're revolutionizing combat itself. The breaking point came when humanity demonstrated something truly unprecedented. Using principles they derived from studying the quantum wake of the Drachnid ships, Earth's scientists had figured out how to temporarily destabilize quantum space itself. The Drachnids found their retreat routes cut off, their perfect formations trapped in normal space, where humanity's increasingly effective countermeasures could pick them apart. "Stop the recording," Skivex suddenly ordered. The tactical displays froze, showing the Drachnid fleet in disarray, retreat routes cut off, facing an enemy they had gravely underestimated. What we're witnessing isn't just warfare. It's the birth of a new era in galactic history. Sarah turned to the shadow being. "What do you mean?" "Your species hasn't just defeated the Drachnids. You've proven that 10,000 years of tactical doctrine can be undone in hours by sufficiently motivated humans. Every species watching this battle is now aware that humanity doesn't just think outside conventional boundaries. You actively rewrite them." The implications hung heavy in the air. The quarantine hadn't just been broken. It had been shattered in the most public and dramatic way possible. Humanity had been forced onto the galactic stage, and their debut performance had just demonstrated exactly why the advanced species had tried to keep them isolated. "So what happens now?" Sarah asked, watching as the last Drachnid ships either surrendered or were destroyed by Earth's improvised defenses. Skivex's shadowy form seemed to grow more substantial. "Now, Captain, we face a galaxy where humanity can no longer be contained. The real question is, are we ready for what your species will do with access to advanced galactic technology?" As if in answer, another report came in. Earth's scientists, building on principles observed during the battle, had already begun theorizing improvements to quantum drive technology. The galaxy's carefully maintained technological stasis was about to be upended by a species that viewed impossible as merely a temporary inconvenience. The age of quarantine was over. The age of human innovation was about to begin. The truth emerges. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in its 50,000-year history. Representatives from 300 species gathered in the vast chamber, their attention fixed on the holographic display showing Earth's battle against the Drachnid fleet. The recording had been playing on repeat for hours, each viewing revealing new innovations that sent shockwaves through the assembled delegates. They weaponized quantum uncertainty itself, a Malorian physicist was explaining, her bioluminescent form flickering with excitement despite the gravity of the situation, not through centuries of careful research, but through improvisation in the heat of battle. The implications are staggering. High Commissioner Skivex's shadow form dominated the central platform, with Captain Chen and her crew standing nearby as living proof of humanity's potential. The humans' presence had required multiple security protocols to be overridden, but after the Battle of Earth, no one could deny their right to be there. The quarantine protocols were established for good reason. Skivex addressed the council. What you've witnessed is merely a fraction of humanity's potential for disruption. Their minds work in ways that defy our understanding of cognitive evolution. They don't just solve problems, they redefine them. A Drachnid representative, one of the few who had survived their species' disastrous attempt at invasion, rose to speak. Their chitinous armor still bore scars from the battle. We believed them primitive, easily conquered. Instead, they turned our own perfection against us. In 6 hours, they rendered useless battle strategies we had refined over 10 millennia. Sarah stepped forward, drawing nervous glances from many delegates. "You keep talking about perfection," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "But that's exactly the problem. Perfect means finished. Finished means no more growth, no more adaptation. Humanity doesn't believe in perfect. We believe in better." The chamber erupted in murmurs as translators conveyed her words in hundreds of languages. The concept she expressed was almost physically painful to many species, challenging their most basic assumptions about progress and development. "Show them," Skivex commanded, and new images appeared in the holographic display. They showed human history, not the sanitized version the Council had studied, but the raw, chaotic story of humanity's rise. Every great leap forward, every innovation born from necessity or curiosity, or simple stubborn refusal to accept limitations. Humanity doesn't wait for ideal conditions, the High Commissioner explained. They don't follow careful, pre-planned paths of development. When they need something that doesn't exist, they imagine it into existence. When faced with insufficient resources, they develop new ways to use what they have. When confronted with impossibility, they reject it entirely. The display showed scenes from human spaceflight, from primitive chemical rockets to their first fumbling attempts at quantum drive technology. The progress was messy, marked by failures and setbacks, but always moving forward, always innovating. "This is why they were quarantined," Skivex continued. "Not because they were dangerous in a conventional sense, but because they represent something far more disruptive, the capacity for unlimited change. A theorist of the collective mind, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, pulsed with concern. Their pattern-breaking abilities could destabilize the entire galaxy. Every standard they encounter, they will question. Every system, they will attempt to improve. Every limitation, they will challenge." "You say that like it's a bad thing." Engineer Martinez spoke up from beside Sarah. He had been studying the Council Chamber's environmental systems with professional interest. "I can already think of 3 ways to improve your life support efficiency by at least 30%. The chamber fell silent. The casual way he suggested improving technology that had been standardized for millennia perfectly illustrated humanity's disruptive potential. "That is precisely what we fear," the theorist responded. "You cannot help yourselves. You see something that works perfectly well, that has worked perfectly well for thousands of years, and your immediate instinct is to change it." Dr. Patel stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overwhelming his diplomatic caution. "But isn't that the natural order of things? Change, adaptation, evolution. The universe isn't static. Why should society be?" His words hit the Council like a physical force. For most galactic species, stability was the highest goal, change something to be managed and controlled. Humanity's embrace of constant evolution was almost incomprehensible to them. Perhaps, a new voice rang out. "That is exactly what our galaxy needs." The speaker was an ancient, one of the first species to achieve spaceflight. Their crystalline form was dark with age, capturing and refracting light in hypnotic patterns. "We have maintained stability for so long that we have stagnated. We call it perfection to hide from the truth. We are afraid to change." The ancient's words carried enormous weight. When they continued, every delegate listened intently. The humans do not share our fear. They embrace change, seek it out, create it where it does not exist. Yes, this is dangerous. Yes, this will disrupt our carefully maintained order. But perhaps disruption is preferable to stagnation. Sarah watched as the council grappled with these ideas. She could see the fear in some delegates, the excitement in others, the calculation in many. The galaxy was being forced to confront a fundamental truth. Humanity couldn't be quarantined anymore, and their influence would change everything. "There's something else you should know," she said, sensing the moment was right. During the battle, Earth's scientists didn't just develop countermeasures. They've already started improving on the technology they observed. As we speak, they're developing more efficient quantum drives, more stable energy systems, more effective defense screens, and they're eager to share these improvements with anyone who's interested. The chamber erupted in chaos. The offer of improved technology was both tantalizing and terrifying. Accept it, and their carefully maintained standards would be disrupted. Reject it, and they would fall behind those who did accept. And so it begins. Skivex's shadow form seemed to smile, though Sarah couldn't quite tell how. The quarantine is broken, and humanity's age of innovation is about to reshape our galaxy. The only question that remains is, will we embrace the change or be left behind by it? The answer to that question would determine the future of galactic civilization. The truth had emerged. Humanity wasn't just another spacefaring species. They were an unstoppable force for change in a galaxy that had forgotten how to evolve. Paradigm shift. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, the galaxy was experiencing changes at a pace unprecedented in its history. The Great Hall of the Galactic Exchange Hub, once a monument to stability and unchanging order, had become a bustling center of innovation and collaboration. Humans worked alongside alien species, their combined creativity leading to breakthroughs that would have been unthinkable just months ago. Captain Sarah Chen, now serving as Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council, watched from an observation platform as a team of human and Malorian engineers tested a new quantum drive configuration. The design had started as a casual suggestion from a junior human engineer, questioning why quantum drives needed to follow such rigid spatial rules. 3 days later, they had a working prototype that increased efficiency by 60%. Still having trouble believing it, High Commissioner Skivex materialized beside her, the shadow being's form more settled than it had been during their first meeting. The initial fear of humanity had given way to a cautious appreciation for their catalytic effect on galactic development. "Not the improvements," Sarah replied, gesturing to where Dr. Patel was explaining human cognitive frameworks to a group of fascinated alien scientists. "What surprises me is how quickly some species adapted to our way of thinking. It's like they were just waiting for permission to innovate." "Many were," Skivex acknowledged. "Stability brought great benefits to our galaxy, but it also created invisible chains. Your species didn't just break free of quarantine. You showed everyone else that their chains were self-imposed." Below them, Engineer Martinez was working with a team of Drachnid engineers, former enemies now eager students of human innovation. The Drachnids, humbled by their defeat, had been among the first to embrace change. Their rigid military hierarchy had been replaced by a more flexible structure that encouraged individual initiative and creative thinking. The Drachnid High Command requested another 100 human advisors this morning, Skivex informed her. "They're particularly interested in your species' concept of thinking outside the box, though they're still struggling to understand why anyone would want to leave a perfectly good box in the first place." Sarah smiled at that. The phrase "thinking outside the box" had become something of a galaxy-wide phenomenon, with various species interpreting it in their own unique ways. The Malorians had created actual boxes to think outside of, while the collective mind had spent 3 weeks contemplating the metaphysical implications of boxes in general. "And what about the resistance?" she asked, knowing that not everyone had embraced the changes humanity had brought. "Any word from the preservation faction?" Skivex's form rippled with what might have been amusement. They're still maintaining their isolation, refusing all contact with human-influenced systems. Of course, they're also using the improved quantum communications network you developed to broadcast their protests, apparently without irony. The resistance to human influence had been inevitable, but it was proving increasingly difficult to maintain. Every species that embraced innovation was advancing rapidly, while those that clung to the old ways found themselves falling behind. It wasn't just technology. Human approaches to art, culture, and social organization were spreading through the galaxy like wildfire. The ancient was right, Sarah mused, watching as a group of young aliens from various species engaged in a human-style brainstorming session. The galaxy needed this change. We all did. Indeed, Zkivex agreed, though I doubt anyone anticipated just how extensive those changes would be. The shadow being gestured to a nearby holographic display showing the latest statistics. In just 6 months, there had been more technological advancement than in the previous 1,000 years combined. But it wasn't just about technology. Humanity's influence had sparked a renaissance in galactic culture. Species that had maintained rigid social structures for millennia were experimenting with new forms of governance. Artists were creating new forms of expression. Scientists were challenging established theories, and philosophers were exploring new ways of thinking. We've received another dozen requests for human cultural exchanges, Zkivex reported. The concept of fiction has become particularly popular. Several species are still struggling to understand how something can be true without being factual, but they're fascinated by the possibilities. Sarah laughed. Wait until they discover human humor. The Malorian Comedy Club is still trying to understand why humans find surprise endings funny. She paused, remembering something. How's Enkchithel handling all this? Last I heard, the rapid pace of change was causing some stress in their crystalline structure. Actually, they've adapted remarkably well, Zkivex replied. They've developed a new form of crystal matrix that can accommodate multiple simultaneous changes. They're calling it dynamic stability, a very human concept, I believe. The galaxy was learning that change and stability weren't mutually exclusive. Humanity's gift wasn't chaos, as many had feared, but rather the ability to see possibility where others saw only limitation. They showed that progress didn't have to mean abandoning the past, but building upon it in new and unexpected ways. There's a human phrase for what's happening, Sarah said, watching as another successful test brought cheers from the mixed species engineering team below. At Paradigm Shift, we're not just changing the galaxy, we're changing how the galaxy thinks about change itself. Zkvex's form seemed to nod. The quarantine protocols were based on fear. Fear of change, fear of disruption, fear of the unknown. Your species taught us that those fears were holding us back from our true potential. As if to emphasize the point, alarms began blaring throughout the hub, not warnings, but celebrations. Another breakthrough had been achieved, this time in medical technology. A human doctor, working with a team of alien biologists, had developed a way to adapt human stem cell therapy to work across different species. It would revolutionize medical treatment throughout the galaxy. You know what the best part is? Sarah asked, watching the celebrations below. This is just the beginning. Humanity hasn't even started to reach our full potential, and neither has the galaxy. Together, there's no limit to what we might achieve. The High Commissioner's shadow form rippled with what might have been excitement. That, Ambassador Chen, is both the most thrilling and terrifying thing about your species. You don't just embrace the unknown. You rush to meet it, eager to see what new possibilities it might bring. As they watched the continued celebrations, Sarah reflected on how far they'd come from that first contact with the observation post. The galaxy had feared humanity would bring chaos and destruction. Instead, they had brought something far more powerful: hope. Hope for a future not limited by the past, hope for possibilities yet unimagined, hope for a galaxy that could grow and change and improve without end. The age of stagnation was over. The age of human innovation had begun. and the galaxy would never be the same again.